Adhar, Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki, Shri Mayapur Navadip Dham ki, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki, Ganga Mai ki, Jamuna Mai ki, Tulsi Devi ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki, Brihat Padanga Shri Shri Gornatai ki, Shri Shri Radha Nidamadava ki, Shri Shri Radha Govinda ki, or Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Radha Giri Dadi. Ma Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. How many devotees here have already chanted 16 rounds? Very good. How many devotees have already chanted 32 rounds? Okay. On our way. 64 or less or more. But that's a nice goal. 64. This is purposefully a short class. So be ready for an abrupt ending because it's going to be short. The title, Here with the Spiritual Ear, can be a little puzzling. Like, what does that mean, Here with the Spiritual Ear? It's taken from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. As you know, one of his accomplishments or one of his purification achievements was he made a vow to chant 1 billion names, which he did during the middle age of his life, and he chanted 3 times 64 rounds every day for 9 years. Every day for 9 years. which was the equivalent of what Haridas Thakur did for his life. Superman. So he's an experienced person to explain what chanting attentively means and effectively. So his writing on this particular topic is as follows. Now this is drawn from a letter, because he did many instructions, so we can imagine that letters that he wrote were circulated, and certainly letters were gathered and collected and published in a book. Patravali was the name of the book, Patra, so the letter collection. The name of the Lord and the Lord himself are not two separate entities, but one. When the sound of the holy name passes over the lips, the conditioned sense of hearing and the conditioned consciousness initially process the sound as if it were material, and that is how it is perceived. As a result, only the external ear hears it. Since the other senses and mind, because the mind is one of the senses, which is the controller of sensory experience, are envious of the ear. Did you know that? Which they consider to be an equal partner. The result is that such chanting does not affect the cleansing of anarthas. Could you say that again, please? Sure. That hearing where we're not hearing attentively doesn't cleanse anarthas. We do not have the capacity, even theoretically, to know that the name and the Lord of the name are one. Just as piercing of the ear is one of the Vedic rites for a young child, when our spiritual ear has been pierced by the holy name, the other senses give up their envy of the auditory sense. So that's the king, more than the mind. They no longer quibble with the ear, which alone can perceive the transcendental sound. Then the flood of prema pours forth from the spiritual senses and cleanses away the contaminants of opposition and malice. Pretty interesting, huh? There's a lot going on in the subtle platform. He goes on, I'll read the remainder of the letter shortly. But it's the message for this morning is go beyond mechanical chanting. Because we're familiar, too familiar, with mechanical chanting. And it would be nice, and we would like for each of us to go beyond mechanical chanting into actual hearing with, in his words, the spiritual ear. Now there's two things. There's chanting and there's the hearing of transcendental sound vibration through Scripture. This is another nice teaching, one of Bhaktisiddhanta's teachings that I like very much, so I'll just share it quickly. Okay. He writes and teaches that our celebrated verse in this age of Kali, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy name. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Harir nama eva kevalam. Kalo nasyeva gatir anyata. In reference to that specific verse, he writes that the statement Harir nama does not mean simply the sound of his name. Rather, it means, or is implicit, not explicit, implicit that one must also hear Harikatha, like scripture. Because just as we don't worship Krishna alone, but we worship Radha Krishna, so the chanting of the name, who is Krishna, is to be accompanied by Radha, the Harikatha. So the Radha Krishna worship go together, and Harikatha and Nama, Harer Nama go together. So it's implicit. That's his writing. And as you know, he's posing, apparently, for a photo, and he has his hand in his bead bag, but he also has books by his side. Yesterday, I mentioned the magnifying glass, and so here's an illustration of the same. The illustration is showing the light of the sun is not only light, but these two qualities are there, heat and light. So the heat and light of the sun are distributed throughout the universe, according to the Vedic depiction of the structure of our universe. The sun, light, and heat is distributed through the universe. And here we are, and it's getting cold. But it's a little warmer here than it is some other parts of the country, that's for sure. And when the light and heat of the sun is focused through a magnifying glass, like it's shown here, it makes a little point, and that little point is fire, because the light and heat of the sun is also fire. So you focus it and it becomes fire. Similarly, when hearing with rapt attention, which we're striving for, it's the Nija Sarva Shaktis. All the spiritual potencies of the holy name are experienced when there's focused chanting, like this magnifying glass illustrates. And how is that accomplished? Because we're not there yet. Well, we need a magnifying glass. We need that which is going to bring focus to our efforts. The abhyasa, effort. But, the enthusiasm is needed to make that effort successful. Here's a little nice teaching from Patanjali Yoga Sutra 1.14, which is a definition of practice or abhyasa. So here it is. It's very short. Sa tu dirghakala nairantarya satkar aveshito drita bhanu. So this is a sutra. So you have to unpack it a little bit because it's packed up. Dirgha kala satu. So it's a pronoun, but dirgha kala, over a prolonged period of time. Nairantarya, undeviating steadiness or continuous. So, in simple language, something you do every day is something you do over a prolonged period of time. And then satkara. He doesn't say faith. Rupa Goswami uses the language adara, with reverence and devotion. That's how he describes how the chanting should be done. But satkara. So 1, 2, 3. That's what the practice of yoga is. So over a prolonged period of time with undeviating steadiness or continuous, so something you do every day over a long period of time with respect, with faith, with confidence, with reverence, with devotion, with adara. And you practice, 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 and that's like adjusting the magnifying glass in such a manner that the light and heat comes to a focus point and it burns. Or the effectiveness, just as Bhaktisiddhanta was describing hearing with the spiritual ear, distinct from merely hearing the sound. So like, there's a sound. To elaborate the point, there's a sound, like there's some sound going on back there in the pujari room, so you can hear the sound. You can't see what it is, but somebody's back there making sound. So sound is transmitted through the air, and it hits the eardrum. The eardrum has a nervous system connected to it, and then the nervous system sends a signal to the mind, the repository or collector of sensations, and then the mind registers, there's a sound. And then the intelligence is going to evaluate, what is that? Just like the opening and closing of the door, you can hear, so it's something. What is it? That's the intelligence is discerning or discriminating. What is it? And material sound is like that, and chanting may remain on the material sound perception platform, although it's not. So then an effort needs, because Sankhya teaches us there's coverings, and then there's that which the coverings are covering. That there's this spiritual form, swarup, and then there's spiritual senses, including the spiritual ear. So to hear with the spiritual ear means what's on the screen here. You can, in a very focused manner, the attention is over a prolonged period of time with undeviating steadiness, with reverence and attention. You practice and practice. Commonly practice is intermittent. Sometimes and sometimes not, as we were discussing, the sine curve. And the idea is to make the sine curve flat, so it doesn't go up and down, it's just steady. And that kind of hearing pierces the ear, or brings this realization. I'll read the rest of it, it's very nice. What happens after that? Supposing one is successful, we're not successful, but Bhaktisiddhanta was certainly successful, and here's what happens after that. Thereafter, the Lord's beautiful form, qualities, associates, and pastimes are revealed in the name, capital H, himself, and experienced by the chanter as something quite distinct from his previous experiences in the mundane world. So we were hearing yesterday about vachaka. There was some question after, what does that mean? But in simple, just keep it simple. It's Krishna in all these features in sound. And then in addition to sound, he may manifest himself other than in sound. Here I am. I am here's my form, here's my words. And when he can reveal himself in that way, but the initial is through sound. And revealed in the name himself and experienced by the chanter as something quite distinct from his previous experiences in the mundane world. Then, the kinds of worries and distractions of the mind that are typical of the conditioned living being cannot remain. When light is there, darkness is dispelled. Darkness doesn't stay where there's light. It's very simple. So how to get to the light? This practice and practice with a purpose. I'll remind you, I meant to say it yesterday evening, but here we're doing it this morning. The sankalpa that you spent some time writing, stay with it. That's the magnifying glass. And hold it in the right position steady. And you'll focus in such a way that the light is at a small point, very focused. When we learn to hear as we chant, the opportunity to remember Krishna will automatically arise. At that time, the Ashtakaliya Leela Smarana will become possible. What does that mean? During the day, Krishna's day, there are 8 periods of his day. And those 8 periods of a day, he does characteristically this or that or the other. And it's one of the practices that was performed, probably is still being performed, but was performed by people during Bhaktisiddhanta's day, where they were, during this time of day, they would meditate on these pastimes of Krishna in this time of day. And then they would meditate on Krishna's pastimes at that time of the day, at that time of the day, and so forth, in 8 periods of the day. And it became like a sadhana, a ragatmika sadhana, for elevated Vaishnavas that can control their mind. And they want to remember Krishna according to his pastimes during different times of the day. But his point is, no need. It will happen automatically. That's his point. When we learn to hear as we chant, the opportunity to remember Krishna will automatically arise. At that time, the Ashtakaliya Leela Smarana will become possible. There's no need to artificially try for it. But we should constantly pray to the holy name for his mercy. That's the end of this letter. So there's a very important element which we'll encounter as we go through the day, our 64-round day. Some days more concentrated, some periods of time more concentrated, some periods of time more splayed out. And then what do you do when it gets more splayed out? So, one of the things is bring the mind back. But, the teaching is you can't do that alone. There's mercy that's needed. Krishna's intervention. So our effort plus Krishna's mercy, the bell rings. It becomes possible. And without Krishna's mercy, it's not possible. So that's the conclusion of this letter. So he is describing in this letter this higher stages of experience of Krishna through the holy name. And, it all starts with the ear, with hearing. And that which focuses the hearing is your sankalpa, depending upon what that is, but something that's meaningful to you at the heart level or the soul level or the driving force behind the activity that we'll do with the mouth. Hear with that kind of attention. And with the intervention or the descending mercy that comes from Krishna and through the medium of the representatives of Krishna. So the process, we're all individual, but the process is universal. And it's quite simple, and it's quite sublime. However, sometimes we don't have the taste because. So that's our little topic. The ear conquers the mind. And then I like his language. And then the mind and the other senses no longer quibble. I mean, that's not an English translation of something he wrote in Bengali. It's his English. Because his English is very refined. Not just refined, it's like in outer space, very elevated. So he's very careful in the choice of words. It's a quibble. Ear will no longer quibble with the mind. The mind will no longer quibble with the ear, because the mind we follow the mind in material existence. The mind goes here, we go here. The mind goes there, we go there. We're servants of the mind, and the mind is taking dictation from the senses. There we go. Following the mind, which is following the senses. So the ear can control that. The ear can conquer the mind. Isn't that nice? Is it true or is it fiction? Well, we can find out by practice. So here's this little image that you've seen several times, but I like it, so here it goes again. By cultivating our connection with Sri Krishna in his Vachaka form, so it's a relationship or connection, gradually and naturally we will be invested with a potency which will touch and transform our hearts and the hearts of others in amazing and unexpected ways. So it's nice coming together. It enhances. Of course, nice sitting in alone in a private place also, but this is an opportunity that we don't have every day to do what we're doing. Again, 3 times. By cultivating our connection with Sri Krishna in its Vachaka form, gradually and naturally we will be invested with a potency which will touch and transform our hearts and the hearts of others in amazing and unexpected ways. So the same message again, without all the moving graphics. It's easier to look at this than the other ones, isn't it? Okay, so, and where does that take us? It takes us to where we eternally reside. Eternal residence for followers of Lord Chaitanya commonly is in Vrindavan, the land of Krishna. And of all places, this is Govardhan Hill, a little path leading to Govardhan Hill, and Krishna's waiting for us along the path. And that's our class for this morning. The end. And now the beginning. Let us remember a few things. Remember your sankalpa and hold it. And when you get distracted, hold it again. If necessary, pause or whatever it takes so that you're, again, following that intention, the sankalpa. So you can again focus and again be connected in special way with Krishna in his Vachaka form, because we can access him best through his Vachaka form. And then everything else opens up, if and when that occurs. So that's the practice for today. And I think it's best we just move forward to chanting. Here's Hare Krishna mantra. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu